British science! Save British science!
People here are angry. They're here to protest potential cuts that the government wants to make in science funding. Now, in the week that the UK has won a raft of Nobel Prizes, we ask what impact might there be if the scientific funding was cut.
We think that cutting funding to science will actually backfire.
I'm here today to try and make the government aware that cutting the science funding is counterproductive.
I'm here because I believe totally in the importance of science for the growth of our economy.
And I think the politicians up there should recognise how unusual it is for you guys to come out of the labs and onto the street, how passionate you feel about it.
Ben, is it normal for scientists to be hanging out on the streets like this, in this number?
I think it's extraordinary. I mean, realistically, 2,000 nerds on the streets on a Saturday afternoon it's an amazing, it's a moving outcome.
Well, I think they've had enough, really, of recognising that other people are shouting, other people are protesting, and they're being run roughshod over.
This is partly selfishly motivated, of course. These people are worried about their careers, but they're also concerned about their country. Science has got to be at the heart of our economy for the future.
Science is vital! Don't cut science funding!
I'm an early scientist in my career development, and the cuts are just a nightmare for us. There's no career progression for us, and there's just a severe lack of funding into science.
Having cancer does unfortunately continue to affect my life, and I'm incredibly reassured by the research that I know is going on around the world today. It would be devastating for science funding to be cut.
You've heard so many examples, from the 3 Nobel Prizes this week to Alan Turing to the sewerage system. Science is absolutely vital to this nation. That's absolutely clear.
In the 1980s, I helped found an organisation called British Scientists Abroad. If the funding starts to be cut, that organisation may need to be refounded because people like me and the junior people in my laboratory will be going abroad.
These are people that are worth, hundreds of thousands of pounds to the UK economy each, and yet they're going to be going to the States, to Europe, to Singapore, to Australia, which they can easily do because the funding's there.
So we made the case that science helps economic growth.
What's the one lesson that we've learned from the problems of the last 2 years, economic problems? We cannot build an economy for this country on the back of the service industries and the financial sector. We have to live on our wits.
This is why places like Singapore, Japan, the US, Germany, why they're investing large amounts in science, purely to try and drag themselves out of this economic downturn. So.
The UK economy is to a certain extent fuelled by the science research. Such little amount of funding put into research, but such a great gain coming back from it.
It's taken 30 years of steadily increasing investment just to get us back to where we were in 1986.
The UK government spends just over 0.5% of our entire economy on science and engineering. But even with that half of 1%, we lead the world. So just imagine what we could do with more.
Every pound of public money that goes into science delivers 10 to 20 pounds back into the economy. It would be a disaster to pull out of that. We need it for the future. It is our seed corn.
If the government goes ahead and does what it threatens to do, our economy will collapse.
It was a wake-up call that if we don't speak for ourselves, who is going to? Nobody is.
I think increasingly people don't want to live in a country where our economy is driven by the financial sector. I think people recognise that there are alternatives to that, and we can live in a high-tech, engineering, science-driven economy. And in some respects, we already do. It's just that politicians are too dumb to recognise how much of our output is built on nerd skills.
On Science is Vital petition has just reached 24,000.
Osborne, leave our labs alone! Hey! Osborne, leave our geeks alone!
They've rallied today, there's 2,000 people here. What do they need to do next?
Well, of course, we await the outcome of the spending review, and I suppose we'll regroup then and see whether we want to cheer for the government's good sense, if they've done what we hope they will, or regroup and continue this campaign. I mean, we must do it for the sake of the country.
Science is vital!